My name is Arden. For 29 years, I built walls to protect myself from my family. They were tall, thick, and reinforced with the steel of 1,000 disappointments. Tonight, my mother shattered them all with a single slap. It happened at my father's 58th birthday party. Or rather, what was supposed to be his party. In reality, it was my mother's stage, and the 50-odd guests were her audience. We were at the Orangery, a ridiculously lavish venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a place where the clinking of champagne glasses was its own dialect of wealth. A dialect my family desperately wanted to speak, but had never learned. I was standing near the terrace, trying to enjoy a moment of peace, when I felt the familiar chill of their approach. It was my mother, Carol, her smile stretched tight like a drum, and my older brother, Liam, trailing in her wake like a sullen, oversized toddler. "There you are," my mother cooed, her voice sickly sweet. "Liam and I were just talking. About your new place. The Penthouse." I kept my expression neutral. "What about it?" "Well," she said, placing a hand on Liam's arm. "He deserves a fresh start, Arden. A place of his own to really get his head in the game. You're so successful, you can just get another one. It's for the family." The audacity of it, even after all these years, still had the power to stun me. Liam, at 32, whose only full-time job was inventing new ways to fail, deserved my penthouse. The one I had just closed on after 2 years of brutal, 17-hour workdays. I kept my voice low and firm. "No, Mom. That's not happening." Her smile vanished. "Don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being clear. The answer is no." Her face, a carefully constructed mask of suburban grace, began to twist. In front of our cousins, in front of my father's colleagues, her narcissistic rage erupted. The sound was like a whip crack in the hushed room. Her hand connected with my cheek, hard. My head snapped to the side, and one of my diamond stud earrings, a gift I'd bought myself to celebrate the deal that had paid for the penthouse, went flying, skittering across the marble floor. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Everything went silent. I turned my head back slowly and looked for my father, Leland. He stood 20 feet away, holding a drink, his eyes wide with shock. He met my gaze for a fraction of a second, then flinched and looked away. He did nothing. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it vaporized. The part of me that still craved their approval, the part that made excuses for them, the part that held onto the ghost of a hope that they might one day see me, it was gone. Replaced by a profound, chilling calm. I looked straight into my mother's furious eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just offered her a single, quiet word. "Done." Then I turned and walked out of the room. In the marbled hallway, I didn't stop. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and opened a black, nondescript app. There was only one contact, and one button. Contact, Mr. H. Davies. Button, execute, scorched earth. I pressed the button. I sat in the cool, silent leather of my car in the underground parking garage, the engine off. The sting on my cheek was already fading, but the echo of the slap was replaying in my mind, a symphony of finality. A 30-minute timer had started on my phone's secure app. That was how long it would take for the first phase to begin. 30 minutes. An eternity, filled with ghosts. They say your life flashes before your eyes before you die. In my case, the life of my hope, the one I had foolishly kept on life support for nearly 3 decades, flashed before me. It wasn't a highlight reel. It was a museum of 1,000 tiny, bloody cuts. The first exhibit, I was 18, standing in our cramped living room, clutching the acceptance letter that was my ticket out. A full-ride academic scholarship to a prestigious university. I was giddy, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. I'd be the first person in our family to even finish college. Mom! Dad! Look! I'd yelled, waving the letter. My mother took it, her eyes scanning the page with a detached air. "Well, that's nice, dear," she said, handing it back without a real smile. "Now we don't have to worry about your college fund. We can use it to help Liam with the down payment on a new car. His is getting so unreliable." I remember the feeling of my excitement deflating like a punctured lung. Liam, who had dropped out of community college after one semester, needed a new car. My once-in-a-lifetime achievement was immediately converted into a line item on his balance sheet. The lesson was seared into my brain that day: your success is not your own. It is a resource to be allocated. Your purpose is to provide. So, learn to hide your victories. And I did. The second exhibit: I was 24, living on instant noodles in a tiny studio apartment, pouring every waking hour and every spare dollar into my first tech startup. I was celebrating a breakthrough, a piece of code I'd been wrestling with for weeks, when my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice a frantic whisper. "Arden, you have to help. Liam's been arrested. A DUI. He'd wrapped his car, the one my scholarship money had helped buy, around a telephone pole." My own celebration evaporated. There was no, "How are you?" or "What's new?" It was just a demand. "I need $10,000, Arden. For the bail and the lawyer. I don't have it. Your father and we can't." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. "If you don't do this, you are failing this family." I looked at my bank account. I had just over $10,000 to my name, my entire runway for the next 6 months. But I sent it. Because that's what I was supposed to do. I was the responsible one, the fixer. I ate ramen for the next 3 months, my stomach churning with resentment, but I did my duty. The wire transfer receipt was my proof of love, a toll I had to pay to stay in their good graces. The final, and most damning, exhibit: 2 years ago. The startup I'd poured my blood, sweat, and ramen-fueled nights into was acquired. The payout was staggering, life-altering. It was the moment I went from being a struggling coder to a ghost in the financial machine. I told my family I'd gotten a good bonus. To celebrate, and to test a foolish theory that maybe, just maybe, things could be different now, I did something big. I went to the bank that held my parents' mortgage and paid it off. In full. I told them it was a windfall from a lucky investment, a way to thank them for everything. I imagined their relief, their joy at being debt-free. What I got was a brief, almost dismissive phone call from my father. "Thanks, Arden." That was unexpected. A month later, I was running a routine asset check through one of my systems and saw a flag. A new lien had been placed against my parents' property. They had taken out a new mortgage, pulling out $100,000 in equity. I dug deeper, my heart sinking with every click. The money had been transferred directly to an LLC that I immediately recognized. It was the name of Liam's latest, doomed-to-fail business venture, a gourmet food truck for dogs. They had taken my gift, my gesture of love and freedom, and immediately converted it back into debt to fuel my brother's delusions. They had betrayed the very foundation of the gift. That was the day the daughter in me truly died. The strategist, the CEO, was born in her place. I realized they would never change. They were a black hole, and I could either let them consume me, or I could build a weapon so powerful, so absolute, that they would never be able to touch me again. So I did. I started building my arsenal, piece by piece. Quietly acquiring assets, pulling strings, and setting up the intricate web of corporate entities that now formed my fortress. I never wanted to use it. I prayed I would never have to. But tonight, my mother hadn't just slapped me. She had pushed the launch button. A soft chime from my phone brought me back to the present. The 30-minute timer was at 0. A new message appeared from Mr. Davies. Phase 1 complete. Awaiting instructions for Phase 2. I took a deep breath. Phase 1 was just the overture. The real opera was about to begin. The world thinks of power in terms of things you can see: skyscrapers, superyachts, a penthouse apartment with a view that could make an atheist believe in a higher power. My power was invisible. It lived in the silent, humming servers of data centers, in the coded language of shell corporations and holding companies. My public-facing identity, the one I fed my family, was Arden, the high-level freelance tech consultant. It was the perfect cover. It was vague enough to be impressive, but grounded enough not to raise too many questions. It explained the nice clothes, the decent car, the ability to help out from time to time. It was a meticulously crafted lie, a fog of war to hide the truth. Arden, the founder and sole owner of AV Capital. AV stood for Arden Ventures, a name only my lawyer and my accountant knew. To the world, AV Capital was a notoriously aggressive and secretive private equity firm. We specialized in hostile takeovers of distressed assets. We bought companies others saw as failing, stripped them down to their profitable cores, and either sold them for parts or rebuilt them into ruthless, efficient machines. I was a corporate raider, a ghost in the financial machine. My penthouse wasn't bought in my name. It was owned by an LLC called Seraphim Properties, which was owned by another LLC, and so on, a nesting doll of legal entities that eventually led back to AV Capital. I had built this fortress of secrecy for one reason: I wanted a family. A real one. I harbored the naive, childish fantasy that if I could just keep my success contained, if I could just be Arden the consultant, instead of Arden the mogul, then maybe they would love me for me. Maybe we could have a normal Christmas, a real birthday celebration where the focus wasn't on what I could provide. It was a fool's errand. Every act of generosity was met with an expectation for more. Every boundary I set was treated as a personal insult. They didn't want a daughter, they wanted a bank, an ATM that happened to share their DNA. My Aunt Kate, my mother's younger sister, was the only one who saw through the facade. She never knew the scale of it, but she knew the dynamic. "Don't let them bleed you dry, Arden," she'd tell me in quiet phone calls. "Your mother, she loves you, but she's a predator when it comes to her own ambitions." Kate was the only one who ever sent me a birthday card without a hint of a request attached. She was the reason I hadn't cut them off years ago. Her existence was proof that not everyone with our blood running through their veins was a vampire. But even Kate didn't know about scorched earth. That was my secret. My fail-safe. My mutually assured destruction protocol. And tonight, the button had been pressed. The ghost was finally coming out of the machine. I watched from the tinted privacy of my car as the glass doors to the lobby slid open. The man who stepped out was the physical embodiment of my invisible empire. Mr. Harrison Davies was in his late 50s, with a perfectly tailored suit that cost more than my first car, and a demeanor so calm and collected it bordered on inhuman. He was my head of operations and, more importantly, my fixer. He was followed by two broad-shouldered men in identical, ill-fitting suits who were clearly ex-military. They entered the party, and even from the garage, I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The music, which had tentatively started up again, faltered and died. The hum of conversation ceased. All eyes were on the three men who had just breached their bubble of privilege. I had a live audio feed from a pin-sized microphone on Mr. Davies's lapel. I put in my earbuds, leaned back, and listened to my creation come to life. "And who the hell are you?" It was my mother's voice, shrill with indignation. "My name is Harrison Davies," he replied, his tone as flat and cool as a granite countertop. "I represent the ownership of this venue. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Due to a clear violation of the venue's code of conduct, specifically, an assault on a registered guest by another guest. This event is being terminated. Immediately. A wave of confused muttering broke out. Then my mother's laugh, high and brittle. That's absurd. This is a private party. I rented this hall. I'll have you fired for this. What's your name again? That will not be necessary, ma'am, Mr. Davies said, his voice unwavering. And to be precise, you did not rent this hall. The event was booked and paid for by a corporate entity called the Polaris Group. Silence. I could picture my mother's face, her mind racing, trying to find a foothold in a conversation that was rapidly slipping away from her. My father's voice, weak and trembling, cut in. There must be some mistake. There is no mistake, sir, Mr. Davies continued, his voice utterly devoid of emotion. The owner of the Polaris Group, and by extension, the owner of this entire building, is the young woman who was assaulted and forced to leave this party approximately 35 minutes ago. She has, via her legal right as proprietor, revoked your permission to be on her property. It was like a grenade had gone off. The audio feed erupted into a cacophony of shocked gasps and frantic whispers. What? Arden? I heard my Uncle Mark stammer. That's impossible. My mother found her voice again, but now it was laced with a hysterical edge. You're lying. She's a consultant. She doesn't own anything. My client's professional discretion is one of her greatest assets, ma'am, Mr. Davies said. Nevertheless, the facts are immutable. This is private property. And you are now trespassing. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle in the room. My security team will now escort you all to the exit. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises before the police are notified. The rest was a blur of indignant squawking, confused apologies, and the firm, polite, and unyielding voices of the security detail. I heard my father trying to reason with them. I heard Liam whining that his coat was still inside. But most clearly, I heard my mother, no longer screaming, but hissing into her phone as she was ushered out onto the street. You tell that ungrateful little bitch, she spat, presumably leaving me a voicemail, that she is no longer a part of this family. She is dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead. I listened to the message, my face impassive. I took a sip of the cold water from the bottle in my cup holder. Okay, Mom, I whispered to the empty car. If I'm dead to you, then I guess you won't mind if I repossess my property from your ghost. I sent a new message to Mr. Davies. Phase 2. Commence at 0800 tomorrow. The next 24 hours were an exercise in disciplined silence. I went back to my penthouse, the one I had earned, the one that had started this war, and turned my personal phone off. It was an act of self-preservation. I knew what would be waiting for me when I turned it back on. I spent the day working. I closed a multi-million-dollar acquisition of a logistics company in Germany, I restructured the debt of a manufacturing plant in Ohio, and I monitored the markets. I moved numbers around on a screen, numbers that represented real-world assets, real power. It was calming. It was logical. The world of business made sense. There were rules, contracts, and consequences. It was everything my family was not. That evening, I poured myself a glass of expensive whiskey, sat on my couch overlooking the glittering cityscape, and finally turned on my phone. It was a digital onslaught. 37 missed calls. 94 text messages. 12 voicemails. The voicemails were first. My mother's were a journey through the 5 stages of narcissistic grief. First came the screaming threats, the message I had already heard. Then came the tearful, manipulative sobbing. How could you do this to us, Arden? To your father on his birthday. After everything we've done for you. I don't understand. I'm just so disappointed. The final one was a cold, venomous promise of retribution, a vow that the entire family would turn against me. My fathers were worse, in a way. They were weak, pleading. "Arden, please call me. This has all been a misunderstanding. Your mother, she's not herself. Let's just talk this through. Don't throw away your family over a little argument." A little argument. He called a public assault a little argument. That told me everything I needed to know. His loyalty wasn't to his daughter, it was to the path of least resistance. Liam's single voicemail was the most predictable. "Arden, what the hell? You totally embarrassed me in front of everyone. Mom's a mess. You need to fix this. Just apologize and give her what she wants so we can all move on." He didn't want the penthouse anymore. He just wanted his comfortable, consequence-free life back. The text messages were a fire hose of guilt from the flying monkeys. "My Uncle Mark, your mother is heartbroken. You should be ashamed of yourself. My Aunt Susan, family is everything, Arden. You of all people should know that." Each message was a small paper cut, designed to make me bleed out from 1,000 tiny wounds. I deleted them all without replying. Then, I saw it. A single text from a number I knew by heart. "Aunt Kate." It simply said, "I heard what happened. Don't you dare believe you're in the wrong. Call me when you can." Tears, hot and unexpected, pricked at my eyes. It was the first time I had felt anything other than cold rage in 24 hours. One person in that entire web of relationships saw the truth. It was an anchor in the storm. I didn't call her back, not yet. I couldn't risk her getting caught in the shrapnel of what was to come. But I saved the message. I took a screenshot of it and saved it to a secure folder. It was a reminder that I wasn't the monster. I was just the one who had finally decided to stop feeding the ones who had been chewing on my bones my entire life. My silence was a weapon. They were used to my reactions, the hurt apologies, the quiet capitulation, the check I would inevitably write to make the problem go away. My silence was a vacuum, and their hysteria rushed in to fill it. After another day of no response, their strategy shifted. The anger and threat subsided, replaced by a desperate, cloying attempt at reconciliation. It came, as I knew it would, from my father. A long, rambling text message appeared on my screen. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive, guilt-inducing prose. "Arden, I'm writing to you because my heart is broken. This family is falling apart. I know you're hurt, and you have a right to be. What your mother did was wrong. She was stressed, she wasn't thinking. But she is a wreck. She hasn't stopped crying for 2 days. She loves you so much, you're her daughter. All she wants is to talk to you. Please, Arden. Come to the house. No tricks, no yelling. Just us. Let's sort this out as a family. Don't let one bad night destroy 30 years of love. Please come home." I read the message twice. It was a trap, of course. A perfectly laid ambush. The talk would be a 3-on-1 struggle session where they would systematically dismantle my feelings, minimize their actions, and manipulate me into apologizing for my own reaction to their abuse. The house was their territory, their home field advantage. But it was a trap I wanted to walk into. It was the stage I needed for my final act. I let him wait for 3 hours, stewing in his own anxiety. Then, I responded. "Fine. I'll be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. There are some business matters we need to discuss in person." The word business was a stone dropped into a placid pond. I could almost feel the ripples of panic all the way across the city. Family arguments they understood. Business was my world. My territory. By bringing business to their doorstep, I was flipping the board. My father's reply came back almost instantly. "Business? What business? Arden, this isn't about business, it's about family. I typed my final message. Everything is about business now, Dad. See you at 2. I then forwarded the entire text exchange to Mr. Davies with a simple instruction: prepare the portfolio. I'll pick it up in the morning. He replied in under a minute. It's already on your desk. Of course it was. Tomorrow, I wasn't going home. I was going to a hostile board meeting. And I was about to execute the most brutal takeover of my career. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with the story so far. It's about to get really intense. If you're enjoying it, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, it really helps out a lot. And for fun, let me know what city you're listening from in the comments below. It's awesome to see where everyone is from. Every single comment helps this story reach more people. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to it. The next day, I arrived at the house I grew up in at exactly 2 p.m. I wasn't driving my usual car, a discreet but powerful electric sedan. Instead, I had my driver drop me off in a black town car, the kind that screams, lawyer. I stepped out onto the familiar cracked pavement holding a sleek, black leather portfolio. It felt heavier than it looked, weighted with the sins of the past and the judgments of the future. The front door opened before I could even ring the bell. My father stood there, his face a haggard mess of anxiety. Arden. You came. I said I would, I replied, walking past him into the house. The scene in the living room was exactly as I pictured it. It was a stage, set for an intervention. My mother, Carol, sat on the sofa, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Liam was slumped in the armchair opposite her, scowling at the floor. They looked like a jury, ready to pass sentence. I remained standing, placing the portfolio on the coffee table with a soft, definitive thud. The silence stretched for a moment before my mother broke it, her voice thick with practiced sorrow. Arden, thank you for coming. I just want you to know how sorry I am. I don't know what came over me. I was just so worried about Liam, and I held up a hand. Stop. The word was quiet, but it cut through her monologue like a razor. She blinked, stunned into silence. I'm not here for an apology, Mom. We both know you don't mean it. You're not sorry you slapped me. You're sorry I have the power to make you face a consequence for it. There's a difference. Liam shot up from his chair. Hey! You can't talk to her like that. After everything she's done for you. Everything she's done for me. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You mean like teaching me that my only value was in what I could provide for you? Or do you mean raising me to be the family ATM while you got to be the family's great white hope? Which part should I be grateful for, Liam? He recoiled as if I'd struck him. My father stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Arden, please. We're all upset. Your mother just wants to make things right. No, she doesn't, I said, turning my gaze to him. She wants to put the genie back in the bottle. She wants me to go back to being the quiet, reliable daughter who funds her delusions and absorbs her abuse. But that daughter is gone. She died on the floor of the orangery 2 nights ago. Carol finally found her voice again, the victimhood replaced by a familiar, seething rage. How dare you? How dare you come into my house and speak to us this way? We are your family. After all I sacrificed for you children. I gave up my dreams so you could have yours. And now you think you're entitled to a piece of mine. I shot back. Is that it? You see my penthouse, my success, and you think of it as a debt owed to you? Repayment for the basic act of raising me. You owe your brother your help, she shrieked, her voice cracking. He's had a hard life. He's had a hard life. I stared at her, incredulous. He's had a life handed to him on a silver platter, funded by me and coddled by you. I'm done paying for it. I'm done paying for all of it. I tapped the portfolio on the table. As I said in my text, Dad, I'm here to discuss business. And right now, the business of this family is officially in liquidation. They stared at the portfolio as if it were a bomb. In a way, it was. You're right, I began, my voice now devoid of any heat, as cool and clinical as a surgeon's scalpel. Let's talk about what is owed. I unzipped the portfolio and slid out the first document, placing it squarely in the center of the coffee table. This is the deed to this house. The house you're sitting in right now. My father squinted at it. What is this? We own this house. No, you don't, I said softly. You think you do. But you don't. I let that sink in. Remember 2 years ago, Dad? When I got that lucky investment windfall and paid off your mortgage. That was a lie. A simplification. I didn't pay off the loan. I bought it. The entire debt portfolio from your lender was being sold off as a distressed asset. So, my company, AV Capital, acquired it. For the last 26 months, every mortgage payment you've made has been deposited directly into one of my corporate accounts. You haven't been building equity. You've been paying me rent. The color drained from Leland's face. Carol just stared, her mouth slightly agape, the words not seeming to register. Liam looked back and forth between them, his face a mask of confusion. I wasn't finished. I slid a second document out. It was a copy of the new mortgage agreement they had taken out to fund Liam's dog food truck. This, I said, tapping the paper, is where it gets interesting. When you took out a new $100,000 loan against this property, you borrowed against an asset you didn't actually own free and clear. You borrowed against my asset. You failed to disclose the primary lien holder, me, on your application. That, in the financial world, has a name. It's called wire fraud. That's not possible, Carol stammered, finally finding her voice. The bank approved it. The bank made a mistake, I said. A mistake my legal team was delighted to discover. But your fraud is just a technicality. The real issue is much simpler. I produced a third document, a notice of insurance cancellation. You let the homeowner's insurance lapse 3 weeks ago. It's a violation of the loan covenants. Which means the entire balance of the original loan is now due. Immediately. And since you committed fraud to secure a second loan, you are in material breach of contract. Which means I'm foreclosing. My father finally slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. Arden, why? Why? I looked at him, the man whose weakness had been the soil for my mother's poison to grow. Because this house is not a home. It's a monument to the lie that we were a happy family. It's the place where my successes were minimized and my brother's failures were celebrated. It's an asset that you leveraged to betray my trust. So yes, I'm taking it back. They were silent, reeling from the shock. But I hadn't delivered the killing blow yet. And Dad, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. Let's talk about your retirement. He looked up, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. You've been worried about your 401k ever since your company's pension fund was taken over by that aggressive new investment firm, haven't you? The new managers have been making a lot of cuts, restructuring everything. I believe they're called Secure Future Investments. He nodded slowly, dread filling his face. I gave him a sad, small smile. Secure Future Investments is a wholly owned subsidiary of AV Capital. AV stands for Arden Ventures. I let the name hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final, brutal truth. I don't just own your house, Dad. I own your pension. Your retirement. Your entire financial future, down to the last penny. And after the slap I received 2 nights ago, I have to be honest. It is not, by any definition, a secure future. If the first 2 revelations were bombs, that last one was a tactical nuclear strike. The aftermath was not noise, but a profound, deafening silence. The very air in the room seemed to grow heavy, thick with the dust of their shattered reality. I watched them, a detached observer studying the precise moment of collapse. This was the part you can't quantify in a spreadsheet, the human cost of a hostile takeover. Carol was the first to break. Her face, which had been a mask of rage and disbelief, crumpled. It was like watching a building implode. The carefully constructed facade of the powerful matriarch, the queen of her suburban castle, disintegrated into nothing. She made a small, gasping sound, like she couldn't draw a breath. Her hands, which had been clenched in her lap, went limp. She didn't cry. She just stared at the wall behind me, her eyes completely vacant, seeing a future that had just been erased. Liam, for the first time in his life, looked terrified. The entitled swagger, the petulant confidence, it all evaporated. He looked at me, then at his mother, then his father, his eyes wide with the dawning horror of a child who realizes his parents aren't invincible. He understood that the lifelong safety net he had taken for granted had just been set on fire. The bank of Mom and Dad was closed. And the Bank of Arden, its new owner, was not extending him a line of credit. He started to tremble, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in his hands. But it was my father's reaction that truly struck me. Leland didn't shout, he didn't argue. He simply shrank. He slumped back into the armchair, the force of my words seeming to physically compress him, making him smaller. The years of quiet authority he wore as a father and a husband fell away, revealing the weak, frightened man he had always been underneath. He covered his face with his hands and let out a long, ragged sigh that sounded like the last breath of a dying animal. He aged 20 years in 20 seconds. They finally understood. All of them. This wasn't a family argument about respect or a penthouse. This wasn't a fight they could win by shouting louder or making me feel guilty. This was a corporate execution. They had been weighed, they had been measured, and they had been found wanting. And their hostile, ill-advised takeover attempt of my life had resulted in a devastatingly successful counter-acquisition by my firm. They were no longer family members in a dispute. They were defaulted assets on my balance sheet. And it was time to liquidate. I stood up, the movement pulling their attention back to me. The shock had now given way to a palpable sense of dread. They were waiting for the sentence. I laid it out for them, my voice calm and even, like a lawyer reading the terms of a will. Here is what is going to happen, I began. This is not a negotiation. 1. You will sell this house. The paperwork is already drafted and is in this portfolio. It lists the house for a fair market price, and the sale will be handled by my real estate firm. You will sign it today, before I leave. 2. The proceeds from the sale, along with the entirety of your retirement funds which I now control, will be transferred into a single, irrevocable trust. It will be managed by my fiduciaries. You will not have access to the principal. Ever. I paused, looking at each of them. From that trust, you will be paid a monthly stipend. It will be enough for you to rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment, pay for utilities, and buy groceries. It will not be enough for country club memberships, new cars, or funding any more of Liam's ventures. Your access to a lifestyle you did not earn is permanently revoked. I then turned my attention to my brother, who refused to meet my eyes. 3. Liam. The trust will pay for you to attend a trade school of your choice, plumbing, electrical, welding, take your pick. It will also cover the rent for a small studio apartment for 1 year. If, after 18 months, you are not gainfully employed and financially self-sufficient, the support ends. Permanently. The gravy train has made its final stop. Finally, I looked at my mother. She was still staring into space, a porcelain doll cracked beyond repair. "And for you, Mom," I said, my voice softening almost imperceptibly. "The slap taught me that your love was always conditional. A transaction. So, my financial support is, too. These are the conditions. This isn't a punishment. It's a severance package. You are being severed from my life, and this is what I am offering you in return for your departure." I slid the stack of documents across the table. "Welcome to your new reality. I suggest you sign." They signed. There was no other choice. My father's hand shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. My mother's signature was a spidery, illegible scrawl. Liam just stared at the page for a full minute before I said, "Sign it, or the trade school offer is off the table." He signed. I collected the papers, placed them back in the portfolio, and zipped it shut. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't offer any words of comfort. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the house, closing the door softly behind me. Driving away in the back of the town car, watching the familiar neighborhood recede in the rearview mirror, I didn't feel the thrill of victory I had expected. There was no fist-pumping moment, no joyous cheer. Instead, I felt the immense, crushing weight of it all. I felt a quiet, profound grief for the family I wished I had, the family I had spent so many years trying to earn the love of. And I felt a steely, somber acceptance of the one I was forced to destroy in order to save myself. The war was over. I had won. But standing alone on the battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of what used to be my life, I understood the true cost of freedom. Sometimes, to escape a burning building, you have to be the one to light the match. I had to burn down my childhood home to escape the fire they started. I took everything from them to get my freedom back. So, tell me, was I the asshole? Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you made it this far, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share it with someone who you think might get some satisfaction out of it. Your support means the world. Thanks again for being here.